So if you're watching this video, you're probably thinking how to do an employee performance review. My name is Desmond Soon, and I'm joined here by Josh Spurrell, Canada's top business consultant, CPA and CFO as well, but he's also an author of this book called The 100 Myths of Entrepreneurship versus Chainsaw. And today we're actually talking about myth number 97. So why are you watching this video? What's important about it? Well, we've made hundreds of videos surrounding these myths that have kept entrepreneurs failing. These myths are the ones that have been handicapping us as business owners. So what Josh has done over the last 10 years is consolidate all these mistakes. And he's actually here to overcome those myths. And if you pay attention, you will most likely end up in the 4% rather than 96%. So Josh, today I want to start off with a quote here. It says, "Life in a classroom, only those who are willing to be lifelong learners will move to the head of the class," the late Zig Ziglar, rest in peace. Now, you also have another quote here which says 74% of employees feel in the dark about how their managers and peers think they are performing, and that's by Fast Company. So talk about this, Josh. How do we conduct, good, effective employee reviews, and why are they important?
Well, imagine if you had a spouse and you didn't know where you stood with your spouse.
Oh, that'd be dangerous.
You know what I mean? Like, what does that do to any relationship with the person who doesn't
destructive.
understand where they are, right? So you have to understand that it creates a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can end up, good employees can walk even when they're completely appreciated, right?
Yeah.
You might value what they're doing, but if they don't know you value it, you could end up losing, right?
Yeah.
And so conversely, you have someone who thinks they're doing a great job, but they're doing a terrible job, right?
Yeah.
They keep going on doing a poor job, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to understand, that they are valuable first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have to understand that the conventional way of doing it, the big business way of doing it, where there's a 500-person company and you're sitting down with HR once a year to go over the things you did good and the things you did poorly.
Yeah.
It's a really low level of an employee performance review.
Right.
Okay. Because it's too long.
Right.
The employee. So you got your poor performers. Mm-hmm. Are you going to wait until the end of the year to tell them that they need to up-level their performance?
Yeah.
If you're a business that only has 5 or 10 employees and you've got one of them doing a terrible job
for a whole year,
that's 20% of your workforce if you have 5 employees, right?
Right.
That's really going to drag down the performance of your team. Right?
Yeah.
And so, you need to give them an opportunity to succeed and tell them that.
Yeah.
Conversely, what if your star player, if you have 5 employees, leaves because you didn't tell them they were doing a good job?
Yeah, you didn't show them the appreciation or gratitude or just give them the feedback, right?
Now you've lost 20% of your workforce, and that person was probably doing twice the work anyway, so then maybe it's 40% of your productivity, right?
Right.
All because you thought that it had to be this annual performance review. We're just married to these annual performance reviews, and they're very dry, right?
Yeah.
They're talking about a 10-page form that HR is using. It's like, don't worry so much about the format of these things, and increase the frequency.
Right.
So whatever you have to do to increase the frequency, we suggest to business owners that you have time every single week to do coaching, one-on-one coaching with your employees.
Yeah.
Right? So it's generally going to be yourself and maybe one other high-level employee, and you're going to bring people in.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to, try to give congratulations to the people who are knocking it out of the park.
Yep.
And you're going to give a little bit of a kick to the people who, need to increase their performance. Right?
And Josh, I know even for yours, without going into too detail of sort of a format, but yours is kind of like a sandwich, right? Like the way you kind of like, you give them positive feedback, then you kind of kick them in the butt a bit, and then kind of give them positive reinforcement again. Yeah,
you got to gauge where they are. Right?
Yeah.
The goal isn't to kind of tear down people, right?
Right.
You ultimately in a perfect world, you could keep everybody. You won't, right?
Yeah.
But your goal when you go into these things isn't to hammer them down. It's actually just to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
To tell them, what they're doing good, because if you ruin their confidence, they're not going to be good employees anyways, right? And so, you want to make sure you give them some confidence and give them some things to work on.
Yeah.
Too, right?
And C players and D players will just weed themselves out eventually, right?
They will. People are a lot of times they're worried about having to fire people. Right?
Yeah.
If you continually bring people in and hold them accountable every single week,
yeah,
they either do what you ask or they get themselves off the bus.
Right. Now, if you want to know more about how to increase your pipeline, how to have so many people wanting to work at a company, go check out some of our other videos that we've talked about this topic, in which you're doing group hiring. So you're never in need of people. You've always got a full pipeline of people coming in. Right? And one of the challenges, Josh, is that people are scared to do these reviews because they know they've got a bad player, but they're hanging on to that bad player because they don't have anyone else to replace them.
Yeah, it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
I mean, because you let a small problem fester, and you might have started out with a small problem, like, I'll put up with it. Then by the end of the year, you got a major problem, right?
Right.
And you've got an upset. The rest of your team is upset too because they're carrying this person, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so business owners, they need to be far less worried about the formality of this review process, and far more concerned with the frequency of the number of reviews you're doing with people.
Okay.
Right? That is the main challenge, right? There's also like a huge amount of bias with annual performance reviews because our memory is short. So if you're trying to give it an objective annual performance review, it's actually kind of difficult because you kind of remember what happened in the last month.
Yeah.
And what if they were great for the last 11 months and they made a mistake in the last month? Right?
Yeah. So you give them a negative thing, but they were actually doing pretty good 90% of the year.
Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Same. It can go the other way too. They were terrible and they just happened to have a couple lucky.
They knew that the
wins.
annual was coming up, so they just bucked up a bit
towards there, right?
Yeah.
It's actually very difficult, even despite your best efforts, to be objective in that sense, right? But if you're continually calling them in, right? So I think feedback at the end of the year on specific issues is not that valuable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe one of the things that you can do at the end of the year is just to evaluate their skill level and their competency at the end, right?
Right.
Not so much specific situations, but just where they are, right?
Or if you're doing it on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, monthly, I don't even think you recommend monthly, but even when you're getting started, at the end of the year, maybe you review all of it and kind of show them some progression or ups or downs or whatever it is.
I like to think like it's almost like you're ranking people on a curve at the end of the year, right?
Okay.
Who are the lower level people and who are the higher level people?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to go back and do all the individual circumstances. You should have been doing that all year.
Right.
And I think people are, they're trying to bring people in and give them a review, and it's like, you were good or you were bad. It's like, well, no, I mean, pretty much everybody at the beginning of their employment sucks. Yeah. I mean, that sounds bad, right? But they don't have the opportunity to be as good as someone who's been with you for a decade, right?
Correct, yeah.
They just don't know enough, right? They haven't seen enough situations. One of the, good hallmarks of a good employee is they succeed at management. Yeah. Well, someone new, was probably a 0 out of 10 in management because they've never had the opportunity to manage anybody yet, right? Yeah. And so I think it's good maybe to give them progressions over time where you are in different factors, right? Yeah. How are you good technically? How are you good with the customers? How are you good with other employees? How are you good at management, right? Yeah. And don't be afraid to absolutely obliterate them the first time. And you just tell them like, this is actually okay. Yeah. Because you just started, right? Yeah. We're ranking you not against where you should be. We're ranking you against someone who's been doing, our best employee's been here for a decade type of thing, right? And it is something we can work together on. I can coach you. I can help you to grow if that's what you want to learn. That's right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So Josh, what is some of the common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make? In these videos, we always give actionable items that you can implement right away. So now there's different levels. Obviously, the entrepreneur that's under 100,000 versus the entrepreneur that's already making over 100,000, possibly even over $1 million. What would you recommend for them to avoid, when it comes to performance reviews or up-leveling their employees so they get better culture? Well, the inexperienced entrepreneur probably has no time to give feedback whatsoever, right? So they're moving from nothing where they need to give time for feedback. Yeah, they're probably like a one-man show, one-person show. That's right. But once they have a crew, maybe say 3-4 people, they need to start giving feedback, right? Okay. And so it's that weekly feedback. It's almost actually going to be a little easier for the rookie entrepreneur to implement this because the employees have no expectations, right? Right. They probably have been there for year, maybe 2 years at most, right? Yeah. And they just started. So whatever you implement, they're going to be a little more malleable, right? And if you check out our time management playlist, is what we talk about blocking things out in your schedule. This is a critical task to block out in your schedule. Josh talks about it, to block out time to give feedback and coaching. This stays with you throughout your entire business. The experienced entrepreneur probably has some sort of employee review mechanism in place, but it's usually just not frequent enough. Right. Okay. They've gotten into that habit. Their employees have stagnated, right? Mm-hmm. And they want to up-level them, and they're like, it's not working, right? Yeah. And then they're probably doing the conventional once a year, right? Right. So they're going to have to increase the frequency, right? And it actually might be a little bit more resistance and a little bit more discomfort for the experienced entrepreneur to implement this, because their employees have expected once a year.
Right.
And now you're calling them into the office, 1, 2, 3, 4 times a month, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's going to feel a little bit different, right? But it's equally important, right?
Yeah.
If you want to up-level your employees, you need to give the feedback more frequently, right?
Okay.
And although it might start out with a little bit more discomfort, right? And it forces you to address problems that might have been festering for a while. Once you get through that, the light on the other side of the tunnel is usually better, right?
Okay.
It's usually happier employees. Some people might have to leave the team because of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really difficult to come in week after week reminding someone about the same thing. It's like, it's going to come to a head, and it's either going to resolve or you're going to move forward with a new employee, right?
That's right.
But the light on the other side of the tunnel, you either have an employee who has increased their performance, or you got a new employee who no longer has that level of resistance, right?
Right.
So the light at the end of the tunnel, you're going to feel lighter at the end of it, right? So it's a little more work. And the rookie entrepreneur, it's a smooth path into doing this and building that culture. The experienced entrepreneur is probably going to experience a little bit of resistance with this. But in both cases, at the end of it, you're going to feel lighter and more nimble at the end of it.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, if you found value in this video and you'd like to maybe even ask us some follow-up questions, do comment in the comments below. You can pick up a copy of the book as well in the description. Check out the other playlists that we've already mentioned here, and we'll see you in the next video.